Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. My name is Ash, and I am back with another members exclusive video. This time it is a tier list, and today I've decided to do a Resident Evil series tier list. Now, I'm a big fan of Resident Evil. It's one of my favourite video game series of all time, and this is a list that I found on Tier Maker. It's just called Resident Evil Games 2022 if you want to do it yourself. And apparently it includes all the Resident Evil games up to 2022. So I'm going to jump in and I'm going to rank them from S, which is, I assume, like S tier, best tier, A, B, C, and then down to D. So we're going to go in order. So we're going to start with Resident Evil, the original. Now, I originally played this on PS1, and I have since played it on the Saturn. However, I do prefer the PlayStation version, especially the Director's Cut version. That is the best version of this game. And actually, I've also played it on the 3DS as well, where it might have been just the standard DS, but you get like the stylus to like knife zombies and stuff like that. It's actually not a bad version. If you do want a handheld Resident Evil, you can't go wrong with that. Actually, it's quite fun. Now, this list does look like it's more sort of one game per title. So, like Resident Evil, they've only got the original. There is the remake, but like the original standard, original Resident Evil release is just one. So it doesn't come up later on or anything like that. So if you're wondering why there's something missing, it's probably just because otherwise I'd be here all day ranking all the different handhelds and port versions and stuff like that. However, there are a few missing ones, but it's not the end of the world. We're going to jump in anyway. So Resident Evil, I'm going to put this at B for now. It's a good game. It's cheesy. It's got some of the worst voice acting ever, but that's the charm of it. And it has those really great live action cutscenes as well, which I absolutely love. Now, anyone who's listened to our podcasts and stuff or some of our content will know this is basically one of my favourite games of all time. Resident Evil 2, it's fantastic. It's a perfect video game for me. Came on 2 discs on the PlayStation. Did come out on a cartridge on N64 and on PC. The PC version isn't bad, but I would avoid the N64 unless that's all you've got to play it on, because the cutscenes and everything are nowhere near the quality they are on the PlayStation on the N64 version. I would also, if you can get it, recommend playing the Gamecom version. It's not great, like I say, it plays horribly, but it has a black and white, like 2D pixelated sort of aesthetic, and it looks great. I think it looks absolutely fantastic. It's just a shame it plays rubbish. I'm going to cover it on the channel in the future, so keep an eye out for that, because I love the Gamecom, and I've managed to be able to get an emulator so I can record. So I'll be playing some of my favourite games from that horrible system soon. But Resident Evil 2 is S tier. It is fantastic. It's the best of the best, in my opinion. It's one of the finest horror games ever made. Next up is the original Resident Evil 3. I really enjoyed this game. I had it on a copy when I was a kid. Tut, I know. But when you switched it on, it had like cheat codes automatically enabled before the game started. So you could have like infinite health or infinite ammo or start with a rocket launcher. And as a kid, it made me be able to sort of play through it much easier. My friend had it imported and it was all in Japanese. So you could play the game. If you'd ever played Resident Evil, you would know what to do. But when it came to the Nemesis choices, it was sort of like potluck to begin with. You had to sort of guess left or right, and then write down whether you needed to go left or right in the future based on whether you were killed or not instantly. So, yeah, that was always fun. But yeah, I'm going to give that an A. It's a great Resident Evil game, one of my favourites, but I don't think it's as good as some of them in the franchise, mainly because it is a lot shorter. It's more action orientated. It does have the awesome mercenaries mode though, so you can't complain at that. Right, we've got Code Veronica X next. Now, this is a highly underrated game. Doesn't get the love and attention it deserves. It should have been the next game to be remade, not Resident Evil 4, because Resident Evil 4 still holds up to this day, really, compared. Code Veronica is a good game. It's the last great classic Resident Evil game, in my opinion, in the sort of old school style with the tank controls and the fixed cameras, which they should do more of. But they just ignore it, and it needs a remake, a remaster. It's showing its age, but it's getting a B. It's a game you should play. It's not as good as 2, 3, or 1 in my opinion, but it is a really good game. Okay, next up is, in my opinion, one of the best remakes ever made. Resident Evil, and originally on the GameCube. It did come out on other things later on, but the GameCube Resident Evil, oh my god, I rushed to get that. It's just a beautiful example. It looks fantastic. It looks like one of the best looking games on that generation, if not the best looking game in my opinion. And it looks miles ahead. It still looks good to this day. You go back, it looks so detailed. It looks great. They kept the classicness to the game, but also changed things with the sort of crimson zombies and stuff like that to sort of mix it up a little. Chef's kiss. It's such a good game. Okay, they then followed up with Resident Evil Zero. Not a bad game where you flick between them and stuff, but it's getting a B from me just because I don't particularly like the story, and I don't particularly like the sucky, like, leech enemies. This is where it started to deviate away from zombies, in my opinion, and I think there are better games in the franchise. I may change these in a bit once I lay everything out, and I think some people may get pretty annoyed at me with some of my decisions, but it's my personal opinion, and I am a big sort of classic Resident Evil fan. Okay, next up is Resident Evil 4, which most people think is their favourite Resident Evil, is one of the best games ever made, but it's going to be. And some people will probably get grumpy with me at that, but I don't like the sort of over-the-camera Resident Evil that much. I'm not that fussed about the action-orientated Resident Evil. I love Leon, he's one of my favourite characters, and I was so hyped for Resident Evil 4. But when they originally announced it, where it had the fish hook enemy and stuff like that, and he'd been infected and he was sort of hallucinating, and it looked fantastic, it was dark, it was grimy, it looked everything like I wanted, and then it just became brown. It became Leon in his little flight jacket in the woods, and it was brown, and then he was in a castle and stuff like that, and I just wasn't that into it. It's not a bad game, it plays really well, and if you've got to play a classic Resident Evil, it's probably one that holds up fantastically compared to most of the others that haven't been remade, or the original versions. But for me, it's not that great a Resident Evil game. It's not a horror game, it is more of an action orientated game. Okay, next up we've got Resident Evil 5. Now, I know what I've just said, that I don't like Resident Evil 4 that much, but I'm gonna at the moment put this in A. Now, why? Mainly because it had co-op, and the co-op was really, really fun back on the 360. I remember getting the demo and playing it over and over again. It has like everything you'd want from Resident Evil 4, but then it looked better. It had the current gen graphics. It had the co-op and everything, and to me, I just really enjoyed it much more than Resident Evil 4. But it is just preference, and I know it's not for everyone, and like Chris is buff and everything like that, but I quite enjoyed Resident Evil 5, especially playing it with friends. Solo, not so much, but with friends, Resi 5, plus all the extra DLC and stuff like that, in my opinion, was really good. Right, next up we've got Revelations. Now, I originally played this on the DS, or the 3DS, and I quite enjoyed it. I'm sure it was on the 3DS, I may be getting it wrong, but this is the one on the boat. And I quite enjoyed this. It felt like a classic Resident Evil, but it was more like freely camera orientated, but it had all the horror elements and stuff like that. I've since got like the re-release versions and stuff on Xbox, so at the moment I'm putting that in A just because I quite like it. I like the sort of return to the sort of boats and stuff like that. Definitely felt like they went back to the Game Boy game where they had Leon on the boat. Right. Then we've got Resident Evil 6. It's just getting put in... Do you know what? No, I can't put it in D, because D to me is the bottom, which means it is tripe, absolute crap. But Resident Evil 6, while it has a man pleasuring a giraffe on the cover, and it was very action orientated, lots of quick time events, and it was a bit all over the place, and had like 3 different stories. It's still a game you can play and enjoy. It's just not a good Resident Evil game. But for now, it's staying out of the trash because I can already see a handful of things that are getting put into the trash. Next up is Revelations 2. I'm not the biggest fan of Revelations 2. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's... I didn't like how it got made into a episodic content and stuff like that. And it just felt like it was a microtransaction push for me. There was so much DLC and paid extra content. If you can get the bundle now, it's not as bad by playing it as one. But at the time when it first came out, meh, it wasn't that good for me. Okay, we've got Resident Evil 7. Now, I have not played this one very much because I don't like the first-person aspect of it. It's not Resident Evil to me. However, I can't deny that it isn't a good game. A lot of people like it, and the VR version that you get is fantastic. So, in my opinion, it goes up there with, like, people are going to be like, it's a B, it's not a B, but, like, B is good for me. Then anything above B is, like, great, and then S for me is fantastic. C is, like, below average, and then D is trash. So, don't take it, like, too offensively, but that's just what I think. We then got the Resident Evil 2 remake. I enjoyed this. It wasn't as good as the original, so it's going in A for me. But it looks fantastic, and it is a fantastic remake, so they've done a great job there. Resident Evil 3, the remake. I really enjoyed this. I'm not going to lie. It looks great, and they've done a good job on, like, the sort of flow, but they have trimmed a lot of content. So I'm going to put it in B. I'd like to put it in A, but the fact that they cut so much content out and then they haven't added it in later or any DLC and stuff like that, it gets put in a B. But I recommend playing it. It was the same price as Resident Evil 2, and Resident Evil 2 was like 3 times as long in sort of terms of content. Okay, next up we've got Village. I didn't like this on launch. I got it day one, but it was first person again, and I just didn't get into it. I've played it since, quite enjoy it, and it's now got the third person mode, so it's going into A. It is one of the better Resident Evils, and it's not too long. It's not super short, but it's not long enough that you're going to get super bored and fed up with it. And there's like I say, extra DLC. Okay, Resident Evil Gun Survivor, or just Resident Evil Survivor. First person, you use a light gun on PlayStation. You could play it without a light gun. A lot of people hate this. I'm putting it in A, and this is one of my but I love Resident Evil Survivor. I've played it through to completion many a time. It's hard, it's annoying, it's a stupid plot with him, like, you're technically the bad guy, or you're a bad person, you've done terrible things for Umbrella, but you've lost your memory. It's just fantastic, it's great, and more people should play it and love it for what it is. Resident Evil Gaiden, Game Boy. I've not played a lot of it. It's going in C because I know it's not fantastic, but it's not absolute garbage. It is a Game Boy Color game, and for that, it's not bad for what it was. Resident Evil Dead Aim. This is a Resident Evil shooter, sort of a follow-up, sort of to Survivor. I'm not sure if this is Gun Survivor 2 or it was the separate one. There was a Gun Survivor 2 where it was like Code Veronica but first person. I'm not sure if this is it. But you would be like playing Code Veronica, and then suddenly you'd run out of time and a nemesis would hunt you down and stuff like that. It was cheesy. Let me just quickly Google this while we're here, because like this is the only one on this list that I'm not sure about. Resident Evil Dead Aim. No, so this one was like a third-person light gun shooter game, and I remember it being terrible. So there does look like there's a game missing off this list, which is Gun Survivor 2. I would put Gun Survivor 2 in C. It's not that great, but it's worth playing at least once. Okay, so we've got Outbreak, Resident Evil Outbreak. I'm putting this at B. I like Outbreak. It's a fun game. I wish they'd remake it. I wish they'd remaster it with the online and everything included. I don't even care if they don't make it look any better. Just bring it back out with online play, because it was great. And I liked some of the The different scenarios are very unique. Same with Outbreak File 2. Some people didn't like this as much, but it's more the same for me. It wasn't as good, but it was still a fun game. Then we've got the Umbrella Conspiracies and stuff. I believe it was Conspiracies. It was a Wii game. It was terrible. It was like the first. It was like the first game in on Wii, but those Wii nunchucks are rubbish. I know they brought it out on PlayStation, so it may have been better on PlayStation, but for me, it wasn't that great. Then there was the sequel to it. Again, it was better, but it wasn't. It was like Resident Evil 2 and I believe 3 in like light gun form. And I like light gun shooters. I love first person light gun arcade shooters, but they just weren't very good. But I would recommend playing them at least once, but they just weren't great. And here we're starting to get to the chaff now. So there's the 3DS game. I can't remember what the name of it, and I can't read it that well. It was like Mercenaries 3D. It's going in D just because there wasn't. It was just Mercenaries. It shouldn't have been a full release. And yeah, I'm just double checking I'm getting this correct before I put it in. Yeah, it was a third person, just Mercenaries only game, and there just wasn't enough to it, which is a shame. It like, if it was like a downloadable game and it was cheaper, maybe, but this was like a full release. We've got Operation Raccoon City next. I actually liked this when I first played it, but it's not a good game. It's really bad. It's like an alternate take on the classic series, but it's just not very good. I'm umming and ahhing between C and D, but I think it deserves a D. It wasn't very good, and it was like the last game we had for a while before they started making sort of semi-better games. Umbrella Corps, let's get in D straight away. It's a sort of team-based shooter on PlayStation that no one plays, and it's rubbish. Resistance, again, a game that I like the idea of, but it just didn't play that great, and it died as soon as it launched. Again, it's one of those free games. I believe it came in Resident Evil 2, a free multiplayer mode, but it was separate. It wasn't part of the main game. It was a separate downloadable game. What's the point? Because no one plays them, and they just die a death. And then we've got Reverse, which I haven't played, but I gave up waiting for it. It took that long to come out. I bought Resident Evil 3, and it said I was getting Reverse with it, and then it was delayed for like an entire year. So for that it gets D, and to be fair, it doesn't look good. It looks naff, and I've not seen a good review of it. So yeah, that is my tier. I think I'm happy with that. I'm not going to change anything. Resident Evil 2 Original and Resident Evil Remake on the GameCube is my sort of best of the best. And then my sort of A tier, which is a like great games you should play. Resi 3 Original, Resident Evil 5, Revelations, Resi 2 Remake, Village, and Resident Evil Survivor. And then it goes down. So like I say, let me know in the comments what your favourite Resident Evil games are. How do you think my list fares? Do you think I've been a bit harsh to some games or not harsh enough? Let me know, because like I say, I'm a big Resi fan. I have high standards. I still want to put Resident Evil 3 Original on the S, but it just doesn't deserve it compared to the others. But it's a high A, like top of A in my opinion. But then that, like I say, guys, hope you've enjoyed this video. If you want to see more tiers videos, let me know what you want to see me rate, and I'll find them and make them and do them for you. I'm thinking of doing a Silent Hill one as well, and maybe a Sonic one in the future, so keep an eye out for that. These videos are going out first to our YouTube channel members. So if you sort of join our channel, it's 99p a month. You get a whole host of perks, including early access videos and the ability to vote on future episodes, and a load of other perks like badges and emotes and stuff like that. So if you do want to support us, means the world to us, and it's 99p a month. That's less than a big chocolate bar nowadays. So winner winner, chicken dinner. Other than that, guys, I'll see you soon for more content. Bye for now.